Good afternoon. I'll start off with an update on Libya. The Secretary General continues to follow the situation in Libya with grave concern. His special representative, Ghassan Salamé, remains in Tripoli, where the UN support mission continues its work. Earlier today, he met with the President of the Presidency Council, Fayez Serraj, with whom he discussed ways the UN can assist with this critical and difficult juncture. As the Secretary General said before leaving Benghazi on Friday, the United Nations remains available to facilitate any political solution able to unify the Libyan institutions. Our humanitarian colleagues on the ground report that the escalation of violence in and around Tripoli has caused the displacement of some 3,400 people fleeing from fighting and has blocked emergency services from reaching casualties and civilians. Fighting has also damaged electricity lines. Clashes with heavy weapons are affecting residential areas, and an unknown number of civilians are unable to flee these locations. We're calling for a temporary humanitarian truce to allow for the provision of emergency services and the voluntary passage of civilians, including those wounded from the areas of conflict. Our humanitarian partners have stocks in place in multiple locations throughout Tripoli. These include food stocks for an additional 80,000 people for a period of 2 weeks and emergency medical supplies to treat up to 210,000 individuals over the next 3 months. This is in addition to recent distributions of emergency medical supplies that can treat up to 1 million individuals and shelter and non-food assistance for 15,000 families across Libya. The humanitarian coordinator for Libya, Mario Ribeiro, reminds all parties of their legal obligations under international humanitarian law and international human rights law to ensure the safety of all civilians and civilian infrastructure. The Secretary General returned to New York following his travels last week to Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Jordan. On Saturday, the Secretary General visited the Baqqa camp in Jordan, which is run by the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, otherwise known as UNRWA. The Secretary General said it was a very emotional moment for him to see young children learning about and discussing human rights and participating in a student parliament. He added that, quote, to see that in 700 schools, 530,000 Palestine refugee children are learning not only about science and about mathematics or about Arabic, but also are learning about human rights, about democracy, and about tolerance, making the conditions to be exemplary citizens. This is something that warms my heart, he said. He also called on the international community to maintain the level of financing for UNRWA this year and to make sure that the stability is guaranteed for 2020. He underscored that if the agency's programs are stopped, it would have a devastating impact on the region. While in Amman, the Secretary General also spoke at the World Economic Forum on the Middle East and North Africa and met with King Abdullah of Jordan. His remarks were shared with you over the weekend. And preliminary reports from our team in Yemen indicate that as many as 11 civilians, including 5 students, were killed and scores of civilians injured in the Shaub district of Sana'a city yesterday. Lise Grande, humanitarian coordinator for Yemen, said these are terrible, senseless deaths and injuries, and we offer our deep condolences to the families of the victims. She said that protecting people and protecting civilian infrastructure is the core principle of international humanitarian law. We tweeted out yesterday evening about our concern about the deaths in Sana'a and called on all parties to exercise utmost restraint and ensure the safety of all Yemenis. During 2018, humanitarian organizations reported an average of 45 incidents of armed violence each week in Yemen. Thousands of civilians were killed last year, including more than 950 children. And turning to Mozambique, our humanitarian colleagues report that almost 670,000 people have received food assistance in the 4 provinces of Mozambique, the worst affected by Cyclone Idai. The UN and humanitarian partners are targeting some 1.8 million people with food assistance over the next 3 months and will aim to provide around 18,000 households with seeds and tools. Almost 430,000 people have been vaccinated, 51% of the targeted population, in the ongoing oral cholera vaccination campaign. 8 emergency medical teams are currently fully operational across the 5 most affected areas, supporting damaged national health facilities and providing health care to isolated populations. Nearly 94,000 people have received shelter and non-food items assistance, with displaced people continuing to be moved out of schools and hospital buildings. The Mozambique humanitarian response plan for 2019 following the cyclone seeks more than $282 million, and it's only 21% funded. And our colleagues at WHO, together with UNICEF and the Global Vaccine Alliance and the Sudanese Ministry of Health, today launched a large-scale vaccination campaign in Sudan to vaccinate over 11 million children under the age of 10 against measles and polio. Official statistics in Sudan indicate that measles is the third cause of mortality in infants and among the first among vaccine-preventable diseases. WHO reports that more than 38,000 people, a workforce of community vaccinators, frontline health workers, and social mobilizers, are working to implement this campaign, which will go on until the 2nd of May. And lastly, the 8th Economic and Social Council Youth Forum under the theme Empowered, Included, and Equal kicked off today at UN headquarters. If you see a lot of young people, you'll know why. Addressing the opening session is the Secretary General's Special Youth Envoy, Jayatha Wickramanayake, and she said the outcomes of this year's Youth Forum will help steer discussions to prioritize young people's needs and rights ahead of the SDG and Climate Action Summit later this year. The Youth Envoy said the UN is pursuing action across many fronts to support member states in meeting these allegations and continues to pursue a path forward, a fair globalization that works for all, while seeking to instill continued appreciation for multilateralism dialogue, including among young people. The forum concludes tomorrow. Edie and then Maggie.
Thanks, Steph. 2 questions on Libya. First, has there been any response to the UN call for a humanitarian truce? And second, what is the status of the national conference scheduled for the 14th and 15th, I believe?
Unfortunately, I have no positive news to report on our call for a humanitarian truce. It is imperative that all the parties involved ensure the safety of civilians. As I've said, we believe some civilians are trapped. They need to be able to escape to safer areas. As for the national conference, I have nothing to add to what Mr. Salamé said himself, I think, over the weekend from Tripoli, which he said planning for the conference was ongoing. But I would refer you to what he said on the record. Maggie.
Steph, on that humanitarian truce, does OCHA negotiate it directly with the parties, or do you need to come to the Security Council maybe to get them to call for it?
It's a matter of it's not a matter of negotiating. Our appeal has been made to all the parties. It's a matter for the parties involved to stop the fighting. Obviously, if there's discussions to be had, those will be had locally. We're asking for a pause. This is not something that requires a Security Council mandate. It requires people from stopping the fighting.
And just one more. Any plans to evacuate any UN staff or reposition them or relocate them?
The UN mission continues to work in Tripoli. The special representative, Mr. Salamé, continues his work. He's meeting he met with Mr. Serraj today, and will be meeting as needed with others. We, as always in these situations, look at at moving non-essential staff, but the key point is that the mission and its leadership continue to work in Tripoli. Sorry. Some adjustments have been made, but the bulk of the mission, including Mr. Salamé, remain in Tripoli.
Could we get the figure
I'll see
on
if there are
that?
numbers I can share with you.
But just getting back to the national conference, though, I mean, who is supposed to attend that if the idea is that the Eastern forces, the Eastern government, is engaged in an offensive to take Tripoli? I mean, what is the point?
Well, obviously, we would. The point of the national conference is to bring the Libyan institutions closer and to solve the ongoing issues through a political dialogue. Obviously, the ongoing fighting doesn't simplify the issue of the national conference, to put it mildly. Madame,
Thank you.
you can try.
Who will be attending the national conference?
Well,
Because clearly the eastern factions are
obviously,
not going to go.
I think we need all the parties involved in this conflict to attend. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Stéphane. Does the SG have any reaction or any comment on the Israeli Prime Minister's remarks over the West Bank that if he won the elections, he would annex?
Look, the Secretary General's position on the occupied on the occupied Palestinian territory was the same a month ago, was the same yesterday, and continues to be the same today. And our position has been made very clear, and it's based on UN Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. From our point of view, all settlement activities are illegal under international humanitarian law and will greatly diminish the prospect of a negotiated two-state solution. Go ahead.
Today, Trump administration labels Iran Revolution Guard as a terrorist organization. How do you comment on it? Thank you.
We don't have any comment on a decision made on the decision made by the U.S. government at this point. Maggie,
on the airstrike yesterday in Yemen, has the Secretary General or Madame DiCarlo or someone high up reached out to the Saudis or the UAE here to get more information about it, to follow it up?
Contacts, I'm sure, were had regionally on the ground. Thank you much.